The last 8 months have been incredibly difficult for everyone. And to have a small business, a nonprofit that depends on the interaction and the physicality of being around people,
Yeah.
it's a huge wall that all of a sudden appeared.
For the kids that are really used to having this social interaction, they're really struggling in the COVID kind of lockdown.
We very quickly adapted and we created online content and virtual content that we decided at the very beginning that we wanted to make for free.
Chelsea Darnell, she runs Movie Chat. She started it at the very beginning of the pandemic, and it was a way for teens all over to connect with each other and talk about movies. I think it's super fun to have that type of outlet because it gives me a chance to connect with the outside world a little bit, you know?
We have kids who are able to have something to look forward to every week and really have this social interaction online with their social club, and that's been really one of our most successful things during this time.
I think that, what I see there is just a great place for people to get support and parents to get some breaks, or caretakers to get a little break.
Month after month, one of the things the parents were really saying is some regression in kids, depression, the social in-person interaction can't be compared to. So we did make the decision to totally outfit the center with COVID compliant plexiglass. And that's one of the things that we fundraise for. I mean, to be able to have these classes for the kids, it's life-changing. We have waiting lists because they're so anxious to have this in-person experience. And we're one of the only essential facilities in the Valley that does in-person classes. People are alone, sometimes in their house for weeks and months with their special needs child, and that is incredibly difficult. It's not just about coming in to the center, it's also about having somebody to call, because a lot of the things that I'm doing now during the COVID times is fielding calls from parents who just want to talk and just want to vent and just need somebody to talk to. So I think what we're doing is really just creating a secondary expanded family, so everyone's part of our family.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Brady Bunch of Autism. I'm Matt Asner, your host for this hour. I'm missing someone very important, my other half, my more important half, the one that makes it all work. So if I'm a little weird today, it's because my better half is not with me. She's actually undergoing, or she has a migraine that she's had for quite a while, and just can't get rid of it. So I've given her the day off because I want her to rest up and, take care of herself. And it's just you and me today. Just you and me today. And thank you, Nina. She loves the haircut. I appreciate it. I did it myself. Can you believe that? So it's interesting because I've been doing a lot of talking with, Steve, who's produces this show, and a couple other people. And we're all kind of tired of this pandemic. It's been rough on everyone. We're all kind of trying to get through it like everyone else, and the best we can, looking for that end. And what is the end? So we were talking today, and he said a lot of people are now saying it's not a pandemic anymore. Now it's an endemic. So later on in the show, we're going to be talking to Gary Bilodeau, who's a doctor, and he's been on the front lines this entire time. And we're going to kind of talk to him about what an endemic is and what kind of things can we look for in an endemic. What is the exact definition of what an endemic is, and how might that change from a pandemic to an endemic? So that's later on in the show. We also have Valerie Vanneman coming on to talk about the state of special education. This has been really hard for people in the classroom, really hard. I speak from personal experience. I look at our sons who have a very difficult time sitting on Zoom all day in a classroom, a Zoom classroom. I can't think of anything that I would hate worse than that. It's just been very hard for them. And what's happening in the world of special ed right now? Where were we? Where have we gone? How have we done with special ed during this pandemic? And where are we going to go? What are the next few months going to look like? Valerie's going to tell us about that. We're going to get into it with her. She's always got some incredible kernels of wisdom that she gives out. And she's always a very welcome guest for us. And then we're also going to talk with our resident social director and movie chat hostess extraordinaire, Chelsea Darnell, who's got a special announcement to make. And we're also, of course, have movie chat tomorrow night. I don't know if you guys caught our art of music class on last Wednesday, but every Wednesday we'll be doing an art of music broadcast here from the center, and it'll take that place until we can get in there and do it in person. But it's with Aviva and Judy. Judy's our musical director here at the center, and Aviva's our art director here at the center, and their class is amazing. It's fun and musical and artistic and everything you want it to be. So tune in Wednesdays at 4:00 for that fun hour of art and music. So I lost Chelsea, so hopefully she'll call back. So we have been, one of the things the pandemic has really kind of brought into our household is that we watch a lot more TV, and that's good and bad. So right now we're in the middle of something called Outlander. We're in season 5, and we're both looking, unhappily towards the end of that, and hoping that it doesn't end too quickly. But we're enjoying it very much. What are you watching out there? Give me some comments in the comment section, and let me know what you're watching, because I'm interested in hearing what your pandemic fare is. So Nina, what are you watching? And hopefully Chelsea will get back to me. We have a wonderful campaign that I believe is ending. You might want to, if you want to do an email, you can still do it, I believe. We are doing a Valentine's Day campaign where one of our resident artists, Eddie, has designed this wonderful card, and we will be sending these out digitally, because we were doing it. We were making cards like this, but they've already gone out. But we are sending out digital cards. So if you want to send a loved one an expression of love, go to our website and go ahead and click on that and send an expression of love on an email. And you will have this beautiful rendition of a heart by Eddie. It's quite wonderful, isn't it? I think so. And now I am going to bring in our resident social director and movie chat hostess, Chelsea Darnell. Chelsea, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I was just talking to the audience about pandemic fare. So we've been in our house watching Outlander. That's been the big epic of choice in our house. Have you seen it?
Nope.
Well, I recommend it. It's all about Scottish people. And I know Nava argues with me about this all the time, okay? But I do have Scottish blood in me. So I look at it as it's about my people, the Scottish people. So she doesn't believe me, though. But I do. I know my family's from Glasgow. So that's where we're from. So I look Scottish, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. See? So we have a busy February and March. We have an incredible announcement right now. We had Joe Montaigne in the studio with the movie chat people a couple of weeks ago. Joe joined us for Searching for Bobby Fischer.
We also had my friend Laura Morano back in December.
Right. And we have an incredible guest coming up next week, and we'll talk about this week in a minute. But next week, tell us a little bit about next week. What's going on next week?
Okay. But so I have to give a little background first. So hear me out. So I've been looking on Netflix and just for movies because that's what I use Netflix movies because that's what 95% of my chatters have. And I was just like looking through, the list to see if there's any, guests we might want. And then I saw that there's this, cute little kids movie called Little Monsters. And I noticed that one of the leads in the movie is my good friend Howie Mandel, my dad and I's good friend. And so we talked to him, and he's actually going to be joining us next week to discuss that movie.
Indeed. So Howie Mandel's going to be joining Movie Chat next week to talk about Little Monsters. You've heard it here first, folks. So tell us when that is and how they can join and all the good stuff.
So that is the 20th of this month. Be sure to email Shelby at teafc.org to RSVP. There's a capacity limit of 18. Besides me and Shelby, besides me and Shelby, it's 18 people in the chat. So that's our new rule is that for any guests that come, the limit is 18, just so we have enough people to talk, but not too many people that people talk over each other.
So it's basically the first 18 that sign up, they're in.
Yep.
So it's first come, first serve. If you want to join next week and this week, write Shelby at teafc.org and say, I want in, give your name, and she will send you the passcode or the password and let you in. So, well, that's pretty cool. No, this seems to be like an ongoing idea here, right?
Yeah, that's my goal. That is my goal.
Okay.
Also, tomorrow we're discussing the movie 50 First Dates in honor of Valentine's Day.
Okay.
So email the same person, same rules, 18 capacity limit.
Excellent. And if they want to get in, what do? They go to Shelby at teafc.org and they say, I want in. Let's do it. So what now? I want to know what you've been watching. What have you been watching?
That's a good question. I haven't been watching a lot of TV shows per se. Although I did just actually, if there's anything pop culture related I could think of, I just started really using TikTok. I have 3 videos up now.
My son Jake is all about TikTok. He goes out and you know what he does? He's a stringer for the news. And so he'll go out and he runs around all weekend or all night doing news stories, and he sells this footage to the news. He's doing very well with it. And he sells to NBC, ABC, CNN, all the news outlets. And he started doing live broadcasts every night on TikTok, and it's crazy. It's crazy how many people are tuning in for that. It's a phenomenon, isn't it?
That's so cool.
Yeah, you should follow him. I think it's Traffic News, TNLA. So, but TikTok has become something that's eclipsed kind of Facebook and Instagram and all those other ones.
Yep.
It's become the new thing, right?
Absolutely.
God, I sound so old, don't I? It's the new thing.
I don't blame you. It's like the new version of Vine.
All the kids are doing it, Chelsea. All the kids. So, it's the new Vine. There we go. I actually did Vine. So, and if you once in a while, I'll have a Facebook post that comes out that'll have an old Vine of mine on it, and you can actually still access them. They're still on the internet. So,
you could still. There's like a whole archive of like old Vines, even though the website doesn't really exist anymore.
Right. Well, it's out there somewhere, and like they say, if it's on the internet, it never goes away. So,
yeah,
there you go. So, well, Chelsea, give your mom and your dad a big hug from me, a virtual hug from me. Let them know I send my love. And tomorrow night, 50 First Dates for Valentine's Day.
You got it.
You can sign up through Shelby at tafc.org. Is there a 2.0 on Sunday or no?
Not this Sunday. The Sunday after, there probably will be. but the movie has not been determined yet.
Okay. Well, waiting to hear what that is. And for those who want to know, Movie Chat 2.0 is for a little more mature audience, an audience that that can watch a PG-13 or R-rated movie and discuss it. And they meet on Sunday nights. And once again, they have an 18 limit. So for 18 people, that's it. So you got to sign up for that quickly and get in on that. So
and the same RSVP rule applies to that group as well.
Watch our Facebook page, watch our website, and you'll know what's going on. Chelsea, thank you. And we will talk soon. All right. Talk soon.
Talk soon.
So I've been in this world a long time, and a wonderful friend of mine and Nava's an advocate like no other, is going to come on the show now to talk with us about special education. And I'm just going to bring her right on because I'm lonely. Valerie, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. So we have a lot to talk about.
Indeed.
So the first thing. So first of all, Valerie, you're a special education attorney here in Los Angeles.
I am.
If you live in Los Angeles and you're in special education, you know the name Valerie Vanneman for sure. She's I speak firsthand. She's an incredible attorney. She knows her stuff, and she's been an incredible advocate. And I credit her for partially for my getting involved in all this stuff too, because she was my guru for about a year or so. While I was getting up to speed on this, although I don't know how you can ever get fully up to speed on this. So, but let's talk a little bit. What I'd like to do is I'd like to do this in 3 acts. So the first act is we're in a pandemic. What promises were made at the beginning of this pandemic? And let's start with that. So what promises were made in the world of special education in the beginning of this pandemic?
Well, I think that it's actually an interesting story, and I'm hoping someday even myself perhaps can write a little bit of a history about what's happened in the last 12 months, because it's an interesting history. There was, of course, total confusion when the schools shut down, March 11th, 12th, 13th, whatever day your school went down. I think we were all taken aback. And we're thrown into crises. And I think without really knowing, we had, on any level possible, we had no information about how long this was going to last, what was really going to happen. When they first shut down, there were stories around that we'd be out of school 3 weeks and things would be cleaned up and we'd be back. And then as time went on, of course, it became apparent that wasn't going to happen. The federal government, to its credit, the woman under the Republican administration who was the head of the Department of Education was very clear that nothing was held in abeyance. That is, districts were required to continue to do IEPs, districts were required to continue to do assessments, and districts were required to continue to implement in a pandemic-safe way IEP documents.
Yeah.
Most districts just didn't have a clue. I mean, even though there's a fair amount of technology out there, none of us, and particularly public education, had ever had to go to a mass virtual world literally overnight. So from March to June, not a lot went on. I think that it is clear, I think not only for special ed students, but for most students, that in many ways those were 3 lost months. I think with the advent of the summer, and it became clear that things were going to go on longer, there was a pushback at the state level to take away. There had been in the original budget bill that was passed last spring by the state legislature, there had been an abeyance period written into it where districts didn't have to do assessments and IEP meetings. And they took that back. And by July 1, it was back in the statute that districts had to do it. Some districts responded better than others. Some districts really did make an effort to continue to provide some in-place services. That is, they allowed personnel to go into the home and provide services. And they did do assessments in a variety of ways. Other districts, including the Los Angeles Unified School District, took a very hard line and didn't do anything. Various efforts were made to get them to change its mind, including the Alliance for Children's Rights and the Learning Rights Organization, supported by spectacular pro bono attorneys from Milbank, the Milbank law firm, filed an action in the California Supreme Court attempting to get really a very narrow order. It was what's called a petition for extraordinary relief. That court decided it wasn't going to offer extraordinary relief, but in the meantime, other people have started to sue in a variety of ways. And the only thing that's really been successful to date is some public interest groups have filed a non-compliance complaint as to assessments against the Sacramento Unified School District. And that's the decision that I think you're hearing about this week, where the State Department of Education said you do need to do assessments. Now, the reality is most districts have started doing assessments. The problem is, of course, in the delivery of the services. It has been devastating for children who do need to have a one-to-one companion with them to access it. For parents who have had the time and energy and are trained to do the one-to-one services, it's obviously been a slightly better experience. But for many of our clients, having this kind of online concentrated need to be on screen is really something they're not able to benefit from or learn from. And there are creative things that some districts have done to try and involve children and have them be involved. But there isn't any doubt that this is a lost year.
Yeah.
And it's more than a lost year. It's a lost almost 15 or 16 months. The push to get teachers vaccinated and to get the schools reopened seems to be an important push to be taking place, because schools, we do have kids who desperately need to get back in school.
Let's talk about that for a second. So there, of course, there's going to be a push to get teachers vaccinated, and we're, of course, California in general is way, way, way behind in that endeavor. And how do we do that so that so that teachers feel safe going back in the classroom with 15 kids, 16
Well,
kids?
I was listening. Yeah, I was listening this morning to a couple of stories about all of this. There's Orange County, Florida, has been open for some time, and the superintendent, I think it must have been NPR, because that's the only thing I listen to, KCRW, go. I think it was Orange County, Florida. The superintendent was on, and she talked about how they, in fact, have put in a heavy-duty safety plan. They've got distancing this and distancing that and the cleaning they do and so on. And what she was saying, that they've looked at their statistics pretty carefully, and they do have some incidents of COVID show up, but it's about like 2.1%, is I think the number she said, as opposed to an overall rate of between 8 and 10%. There are places around the country who clearly have developed models for safety that can work. And if you think about our population, and it breaks down in a variety of categories. When I say our population, obviously, you've met one child with a disability, you've met one child with a disability. Exactly. Everybody is unique and individual. But if you think about children who should be in and who benefit from being in a small class, what we sometimes call a special day class or a self-contained class, those students really should not have more than 8 or 12 students in them. And they are supposed to be in regular sized classrooms. And with only 8 or 12 students in a regular sized classroom, with enough distancing, the use of masks, some use of plexiglass that are being set up, those should be easy, relatively easy to get set up and get going with some speed.
I would say you're right. I would say you're right.
And so, if we were going to focus on the urgent population that needs to get back, many of the people who need to get back are students in those classes, who really do need that individualization, need that small class size, and who need, most importantly, to have a four-dimension interaction instead of having the screen in front of them.
Valerie, when do you see that safely happening in Los Angeles specifically?
Well, I think there are school districts in Los Angeles County who will, in fact, get that going and who are working hard to get it going by the summer. It is not clear to me what the intent is of Los Angeles Unified. I'm troubled by what appears to be the relationship between Los Angeles Unified and the United Teachers Los Angeles. Parents of special education kids aggressively supported UTLA during the strike, have aggressively supported them for years. And yet, on this particular issue, when we desperately need the support of UTLA to say, let's work with the district and find a way to reopen some of these classes that we can reopen, there's been an overall general reluctance, it would seem, from UTLA to do that. And that's troubling. I think it is going to require a community of interest coming together. I think it was actually helpful when one of the city council people suggested that, as San Francisco had threatened to do, that, they sue the school board to open some stuff. When the LA City Council suggested perhaps doing that, I think we saw a little bit of waking up at LA Unified and perhaps some interest in moving ahead. But I think at the end of the day, it's not going to be answered by litigation. It's going to be answered by really, really thoughtful, creative, energized stakeholders, professionals, educators, politicians, parents, and students working together to make a plan come together.
Yeah. Do you think some of the inaction or the lack of action could be from the size of LAUSD? Because LAUSD is, I think, second largest in the country. Is that right?
Correct. It's always been the case because Los Angeles is so large. When I started practicing, just to show you where all these wrinkles come from, it had 800,000 students. Now it's down to somewhere between 500 and 600,000. But in any population that size, 10 to 15% are individuals with special needs. But that means that it's had a lot of clout and power. We're so big, it's hard to move us. And we're so big, you can't tell us what to do. And that's basically been its position on this. We don't care what you say. We're our own world, as it were. But because it's its own world, what it means is that caring, professional, talented, creative people, and the district is full of those people if they tap them and let them do their work, and the community is full of those people, ought to be able to have us at a place that is further along than we are, ought to be able to have us to a place where we can say, by March 1 or by March 15th that X, Y, Z, and, in 15 locations around the city, we're going to reopen X classes and bring back some of the most needy kids that we have who are really, really going to be very hard to recover. It's not a pleasant picture. The regression is every story you see, of course, and I understand it's for typically developing peers as well as disabled, but for our kids, our population, regression is much harder to recover from. And that's why I think it should have emphasis in terms of trying to get it stopped in terms of further regression as fast as we can do it and as safely as we can do it.
Yeah, and then and it's not just education; it's social and emotional impact as well.
Right.
Because
Although I will tell you, Matt, if you don't mind a little story, if you've got a minute for it,
I love stories, Valerie.
there is some small percentage, and I'd love to know what that statistic is when all this is over. There is some small percentage of a certain um, cohort of individuals with disabilities who's academically they just love being by themselves and sitting on that screen and doing the work and don't want to be bothered with having to learn any social skills or
No,
other skills.
true.
They're doing spectacularly well because
Right.
they can spend all their energy focused on the one thing that they like to do and not have to be bothered about, oh, and you expect me to talk to my friend or you expect me to sit at the lunch table with. But of course, what they're losing out on is any development of social skills. Academically, I think it'll be interesting to see. I think they may have made some leaps and bounds, some folks in that population, because they've been able to only do academics and not have to do any social stuff.
Well, our house is this microcosm of autism. Our
Right.
house, and we have we have three kids at home, distance learning, and they all are completely different. I mean, I would say two of them are doing quite well with the distance learning, but one is really struggling, and I think it shows the difference in personality and learning style and needs. And it highlights what you just said very much, that some of them are really doing great, and unfortunately, I think for the ones that aren't doing great, it's really not a pretty picture.
It's going to be, it's going to be a very interesting. We all wish that we had never heard of the curse of "May you live in interesting times," but it is going to be very interesting when the kids who really benefited from the screen and really liked learning on the screen are asked to go back into a classroom. Their reentry, I think, is going to be quite difficult because they knew how to do this education. They've learned how to do this, and they responded to it reasonably well. And now all of a sudden, you want me to walk on a campus, and even if it's only 8 kids in the class because we're social distancing, or it's only, I'm only going 2 days a week because we start with a hybrid model, whatever it may be. There's going to have to be, I think, the demands on the school districts across the board to be more socially aware, to have more counselors in place, to have more mental health services in place, is going to be probably greater than any natural disaster ever has been. I know that after some of the fires and after the earthquake that's now many years ago, the district had a real need to have trained counselors and psychologists around to work with traumatized children. It's that magnified because it's an entire population of students now who are asking to re-enter a world that some of them have been perfectly happy not to be in.
Well, yeah, and it's also something we talked about this earlier in the show. It's also something that's not let's say it's not ending necessarily. It's changing. It's morphing. And what does that look like? And I think one of the things that I think is most disturbing about our kids and watching them go through this is that they've really had the blanket or they've had the rug pulled out from under them, and it's like constantly being pulled out from under them, because I think in the very beginning, like you said, it was 3 weeks. We'll be back in class 3 weeks from now. And it just for forever, they've been disappointed by what's actually happened. So they've gotten this bill of goods. They've been sold a bill of goods by the media or whoever, their parents. And I'm guilty of that too. And all of a sudden, I've got disappointed again. And so what are you going to tell me now? So I think there's that kind of element of like, oh, well, I don't believe anything anyone says. And
I think it's why it's so important that as a district, whatever size district, as it begins to really focus on how it's planning and what it's going to do it, that it makes sure the plan is one that they can implement. There are districts, there are programs in Orange County for kids where the kids are going to school. They are for children with disabilities. Actually, they're young adults in their transition programs, and they're running reasonably well. So the models are there. They're not perfect, but special education was never perfect. If it had been perfect, I would have retired and been on an island off the coast of Africa some time ago. But it's not perfect, but it's never perfect. But it's functional. And for many of the students we need right now, let's do it. Let's be clear what we're doing so we're telegraphing the right message. But let's see if we can make it functional, make it work at a level that allows a child to begin to reintegrate and to begin to learn again, and teachers to learn how to teach again in that setting.
Yeah. All right. This is the last act here. Let's talk about the future. So we're talking about the future. What is your idea of how this could work? Let's talk about LA, because we're in LA. We have people watching from elsewhere, but I think let's take LA because both you and I know LA, and it's the second largest school district in the country. So let's use that as an example. How do you see them going forward? What is your prediction on what school will look like, let's say in August?
Someone told me, and the rumor mills are rife with rumors, so I do not repeat this as anything that is a valid. This could be somebody's fake reality.
Okay.
Somebody said there's a rumor out there that UTLA is saying they're not going to allow their teachers to go back until January of 2022. I hope that is.
I heard the same rumor, by the way.
Yeah, I hope that isn't true. That would be horrendous. It would be devastating. It would be not necessary. We know from other places in the country that if you take, and Los Angeles Unified has within its core really some talented, creative, well-educated people. And if they could be brought together and design a program that begins to talk about where do you take the neediest population? And from my perspective, of course, at this point, the neediest population is our students with disabilities, particularly those who are in need of the individualization. We could design and have in place by summer school even. It's not out of the question. For people, and so you want the teachers to volunteer to do it. Maybe you don't make every teacher do it, but there's enough of a population of teachers out there who I think are going to be willing to do it. And you don't make any student who doesn't want to do it. There are families who are not going to be comfortable sending because the child may have an immunological disease. I mean, we've got some medically fragile kids who are probably not going to rush back in with this. But you take a population, and I'm very serious. We're divided into districts in this district, and in 2 or 3 locations in each of those districts, you put together pods. Other places are doing it. It can be done. I know that Los Angeles Unified during this pandemic has taken advantage of the fact that there are no students on campuses to do an enormous amount of infrastructure repair. Plumbing, restroom repair, restaurant reconstruction that they really had not gotten to because there's nobody there, so they can get the workers in and do it. Well, so you got, let's plan for the summer. We've got 3 months. We can get those classrooms cleaned. We can get them set up. If we're going to put a plexiglass around the desk of each of the students, we can get that all in place. That's not undoable. I know that Mr. Buettner, Superintendent Buettner, has constantly been concerned about money, but I've looked at the money that just came out of the most recent bill, not even the one that's about to come, but the one that came out in December. There's an immense amount of money coming into Los Angeles Unified because it's all geared to their Title I money, and LA Unified had an immense amount of Title I money. LA Unified is actually going to have more money than it's had in a very long time. And there's just got to be enough money there to make this work and to really get some demonstration programs, if you even want to call them that, but to get some stuff going. And once you have the model down, the one thing we know about LA Unified is once you get a model going, lickety split, they can replicate it almost any place else.
Yeah.
So put those creative people to work, let them work. Let's not keep talking about and keep tweeting about how we can't do it, but let's talk about what we can do. And do it in a progressive way. And I think that's the tone change that has to occur for Los Angeles Unified. The tone has been, we can't, we can't, we can't. We hear it both from the superintendent and from UTLA. The tone has to change to, like the little engine that could, we can, we can, we can, and here's how we can do it. And that's a change of an immense need, of an immense, it's a tone change that needs to take place. Or we're not going to get there, and we need to get there.
Well, we'll have to check in again soon and see how we're doing. See,
I just do want to say though, Matt, before you let me go, if it's okay, can I take a second? Parents need to know that in fact you are entitled to assessments. You are entitled to have an IEP meeting. You are entitled to use due process to challenge the inadequacy or the failure to do assessments. You are entitled to use due process to challenge the inadequacy of the programs. And in fact, parents are getting relief through that process. So those are not stopped because of any of this. The due process rights under IDEA continue to exist, and you should use them. And I encourage parents to use them as necessary to try and buttress and to improve and to enrich, not even enrich, to get adequate programming as we go through all of this.
Very important words. Don't give up. Push, keep pushing.
Do not, and start to talk about your elected representatives in terms of the tone change. Let's start talking about what we can do, what we can't, instead of what we cannot do.
Right. Well, Valerie, I thank you. I thank you very much. It's always fascinating to talk to you. I always learn when I talk to you. I always learn. So,
my dad was a great teacher, and I think he taught every day of his life till the day he died something new, because he believed in you can learn something new every day. And I learned a great deal today about something else. So we all learn every day. But let's hope LA Unified can learn to say yes instead of no.
Let's hope. Let's hope. And just before you go, one of the great things, one of the silver linings, I think, really about this pandemic has been to see how people can roll with the punches, to see how they can bend without breaking. And I'm so impressed with all of the people that I know and I see out there, how they've dealt with this. They've done an incredible job. And I really, I think it's amazing to me. It's because it's been a very difficult time, and I applaud everyone for their tenacity and their bendability, their flexibility.
Right. I think that's all absolutely correct, but I do think it's important that now we start talking about what we can do instead of what we cannot do.
I agree, and what we can do is have you on again real soon.
I'm happy to come anytime, Matt. You know that. I love being on your show. Love seeing you. And I'm not so sure you're a Scotsman, by the way. We can talk about that offline sometime.
Oh, well, you've been talking to my wife, I think. So, all right. Well, I think they say British and Scottish, so we'll see.
Right. Yeah.
They list Glasgow as 23andMe. List Glasgow. So it's a long time ago, though, Valerie. It's a long time ago. A lot of it's washed out of me. A lot of it. So,
say hello to your wife for me, and
I will.
Be well and be safe.
Thank you so much, Valerie. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So that was Valerie Vanneman. A lot of, amazing, interesting information there. And the big takeaway from that conversation was it's time to talk about what we can do and not what we cannot do. And that goes for everyone, I think. That's a good policy. Every other week or so, we like to bring our good friend, Dr. Gary, on to talk about the pandemic and how we're doing. And and today's no different. We're going to do it today. And Gary, I'm going to bring you on. How are you, sir?
Cold out in the snow.
You're always working.
Here, take a look at this. Hang on.
It's a snowy day in Washington. What city are you in?
Just outside of Chehalis.
Chehalis.
Yeah.
So
by Olympia, Washington, people recognize that more.
There we go. So Gary's been since the beginning of this pandemic. He's been working literally outside of his clinic because it's really the safest place for him to do what he does. And Gary, I'm sure you're still seeing COVID patients and people coming in for tests. And is there been any change in that?
No, I mean, today I thought it would be slow with it as bad as it was. It finally just slowed down just now, but we've had about 22 to 23 patients through.
Incredible. And I've talked to Gary a lot about this. And that's a fairly decent high number for him. So that's constant.
Yeah.
Well, try and stay warm. And one of the things that we were talking about early in the show that you missed because you weren't watching, because you were working, is we're starting to talk now about not calling this a pandemic anymore, but calling it an endemic.
Yeah.
Something that we're going to have to live with for a long time, maybe forever.
Well, and I think you and I talked about that. I think it's going to be, and we've been talking about it here. This may be the new way of life with masks and, just the way we have to approach things to be safe. I think that that's going to continue. I don't think that that's going to end, especially now that we're seeing mutations. I think every year, like the flu, we'll see a mutation and we'll be like, hand wash 6 feet, wear your mask. And, we've seen a lot of other countries do that when they come to our country to stay away from some of the viruses that we already carry. And I think that'll be our new way.
And it seems like every 2 months or so, we have this kind of moment where we go, oh, maybe this is over. And it, of course isn't, and It won't be. But it's difficult for people to kind of get that, to get that sort of thought in their head that this is not over and it won't be over for a while.
Well, they're starting to get complacent. You're starting to see a lot of complacency just because, people are literally tired of it. We've talked about that before. You get to a point where you want to hug grandma, you want to see somebody for a Super Bowl party, you want to do these things, and then they weigh the risk versus reward, and a lot of them have decided just to do the risk, and that makes it hard the very next week.
I haven't hugged my dad in over a year.
Yeah.
Or not over a year. Since March. March.
Well, we're coming close. We're coming close to a year.
That's hard for me.
Yeah.
It's hard for me. And I don't think I'm going to. I mean, he just got his first dose of vaccine.
Good.
And he'll get the second one coming in a couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah.
But now
hey Matt, do you know which one it was?
Moderna.
So just make sure you watch for some of the side effects, even if it's just feeling really ill. I mean, that's a big thing. Sometimes reaction site and the illness is what I'm seeing. We're seeing a lot of that where it's just like people are down like they have the flu. It feels just as bad.
Yeah, so that's what I heard.
Just make them aware of that. Really hydrate. That's the big thing that I'm pushing for people is to hydrate.
So let's talk a tiny bit about what are the concerns now?
Well, I think the mutations are going to be the big thing. And, how are they going to respond to the vaccine? I think you were seeing when we talked the Africa version or South African version is really tough. They're saying maybe only 45% effective, and that's only against really significant symptoms. Well, what happens when that mutates just a tiny bit more? Is it going to be non-effective for that vaccine?
Well, and let's center in on what you're saying there, because that's important, because this is not something that changes once.
Right.
And then if it doesn't work out, it's like, oh, okay, well, it kind of tried, but whatever.
Right.
It continues to change. It forever changes. It molds.
To evolve. It's going to keep evolving.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's like the flu. I mean, how many times do they tweak the flu shot? I tell people, watch the CDC website. And when the flu's starting to come across the Midwest, people on the West Coast should be getting their flu shot because now it's based on this year's model out of New York. If you take it right away at the beginning of the year, you're basing on last year's model and you're not going to catch it all. Same thing's going to happen with this. Each year, they're going to have to figure out a way to tweak it. We just need to make sure that we're ahead of it. And again, I think we need more treatment-based plans than just the vaccine. Vaccines aren't going to be effective, in this mass herd immunity type deal for a year, whereas we need treatment now to get these people off the ventilators, out of the hospital, out of the clinic quicker.
And now you've got vaccines like Johnson & Johnson. I don't know if they've been approved yet, but they're up for approval with the FDA. It's a single shot, not as effective in terms of guarding against COVID, but it's more effective. It's up to like 95% effective, I think, in keeping away serious.
Keeping people out of, keeping people out of the hospital. That's what they're showing.
Exactly. So that seems to me to be a very good way to move forward. Is
Right.
to keep people out of the hospital.
Well, and it almost seems more of a treatment than a vaccine.
Right.
That's
Right.
how that's sounding. So hopefully they're going to work that part out. I really want to see treatment. I really do, because we're having too many people that are so sick, can't go to work, can't do this, can't do that because they're so sick. If we could find a way, like with Tamiflu and Zofluza and those drugs, to get something for this virus, we'll be ahead of the game. That's really going to help.
Well, I'm amazed that you've stayed healthy. I'm knock on wood.
I'm out in the snow. That's why it freezes it out.
Well, it's a testament. It's a testament to you and your hygiene and the way you take care of yourself, because I know you very well, and you've been out there every day, 6 a.m. to 8 o'clock at night, working hard to make people better and to keep people safe. And I'm glad to see you're keeping yourself safe and your family safe. So
we're certainly trying.
Yeah. Well, Gary, I thank you. Any final word? Any final word until a couple weeks before we have you on again?
Oh no, just stay well down there, and keep telling people to do their masking and social distancing as best they can. And you guys stay safe, and we love you.
No, wait, no. Okay, one last question.
Yeah,
they're saying double mask. I'm hearing that a lot.
Well,
what are your thoughts on that?
When you think about that, I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, you're doubling your layer of protection.
Sure.
Not totally, because they're getting damp inside and you're still spewing a few particles through. But I think that's true. And it's just like if I'm wearing one and the person next to me wearing one, we're better benefited than if I was just wearing it and they're not. Same thing. So if you're doing two, you're getting a little bit of increased benefit. You're still having the leakage around it. I mean, this isn't the one I always wear out here, but it gives you more protection than not.
Well, good to know. I think I've got to kind of baby step towards that, because I think I would be panicking quite a bit with 2 masks on.
Yeah, it's a little tough to breathe.
Yeah. All right, Gary. Well, thank you, and we will talk soon.
All right, take care, my friend.
All right, bud. Bye-bye. So that was Dr. Gary. He is our resident expert on all things COVID. We ask him all these questions, and he tells us these wonderful stories. On an ending note, I just want to say I really want to look at something that Valerie said, that we should talk about things we can do and not can't, and that's a really important takeaway for today. I think let's start looking at the future and seeing what we can do and not what we can't do. Let's not look at the roadblocks. And it's funny, because I've always said that autism parents are parents that look at the hurdles that they have before them and figure out how they're going to get over them. And I think, people living with autism do the same thing. And when they get older, they look at the hurdles and they figure how they're going to get through those hurdles. And that's what we really need to do right now with what we're going through with the pandemic, with the endemic, whatever you want to call it, is we have to look at the hurdles that we face on a daily basis and figure out how we're going to jump over those. And I know we can. I know we can, because we've done it so far. Almost a year in here, we are with this pandemic. And I think the more I live through it, the more impressed I am with everyone. My wife's been incredible through this whole thing. The people here that work at the center are incredible. And I thank them. And I think I'm so thankful for them as people, as friends, as coworkers, and as people who care about people like you. So until next week, I'll have Nava back with me. And until next week, I say keep your seatbelt fastened, keep your feet off the dashboard, seatbelt fastened, and we'll see you soon. Take care.